What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Between Two Tackles. I'm your host, Alex Benelli, and alongside me, as always, is Ray Volo. Ray, my man, how are we feeling? Another episode in our summer scouting series, another episode for the YouTube channel at Between Two Tackles with the number 2. So go subscribe to our channel. We're going to have a lot of good stuff all through the summer. Ray, how we feeling, dude? Tackle class today for the summer scouting series.
Yeah, big day, big day. I think last year we got a little bit spoiled though with some of the fucking absolute mutants that we had in the class. And this
Yeah.
class, I feel like this class is complete opposite of that. There are definitely some guys who I think can go top 5, top 10 potentially, but definitely not the pure athlete, just absolute freak of a class that we had last year. I was thinking about it, dude. We had like 5 to 6 guys who were just like, how are these guys offensive tackles? Like they're massive, they move so light, and I feel like we got a little bit spoiled, but there's still at least 3 to 4 guys I think that can go in first round in this draft. So, and obviously they have a whole nother year to prove it too.
Yeah, last year was interesting too, comparing it to what we just watched for this season. Last year, like you said, some complete freaks at the position, but there were also a lot of guys who hadn't played a ton of football, so it was a lot of projection on that side. This class was very interesting, where a lot of these guys have played since they were true freshmen, and there are a lot of snaps to go around for a lot of these guys. Even some guys as true juniors have played a ton of games already.
That's a really good point. There's at least 3 guys off the top of my head I'm thinking of. I think
Hmm.
actually 4 now I think about it that started since they were freshmen. So it is really impressive. It's something that you don't really see too often, especially at the elite Power 5 level.
Right. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good group, and I think there's a lot of room for some of these guys to grow too. I don't think, like you said, we have the high level of talent at tackle that we do compared to last year, but I still think this is a good group of, 8 or 9 guys that I could see as like day 2 type of players. So it'll be really fun to go through this. We're gonna go 5 through 1, and then we'll touch on some guys outside of our top 5. So who you got at number 5?
For me at 5, I'm going the left tackle from Georgia, Ernest Green the third. So admittedly, I know a lot of people project this guy as a guard, but I
Me.
think yeah, word. But I think going into his redshirt sophomore season, I think playing left tackle last year, I think he's earned the respect to be considered in this tackle class. Also, coupled with the fact that we're probably not going to get to the interior offensive lineman for summer scouting, so I might as well throw him in here, especially in an offensive tackle class, as I mentioned, that I don't think as high level as last year. But this is as I mentioned, redshirt sophomore from California. He was a 4-star recruit, number 70 overall, I believe, in his class. And he took over for Broderick Jones last year, started all 14 games. He only allowed 1 sack, 14 total pressures, and no penalties, which I think is a big green check mark for me on 478 pass blocking snaps. And last year he was named to a freshman All-American too. So this guy really started off his career with a bang for a program like Georgia that's been probably the best program in the last 4 or 5 years. He's unique because this is a guy who is just absolutely massive upper body. He's like a big, just square rectangle, like just like of an upper body. It's massive. Like it's such a unique build. I don't know if I can compare it to anyone else that I like remember, because especially considering like I feel like his like calves and lower legs are a little smaller too. So it
He's
does show
top heavy for sure.
very top heavy. And I think that's what I think is scaring some people off, thinking that he may have to kick inside. But for a guy his size, first of all, he absorbed power like with ease. I think that's probably his best trait right now. He really does do a good job of absorbing speed to power bull rushes. But for someone his size, he does have some good movement ability. I think he's someone who could stick out on an island and pass block. Whether that's left tackle or right tackle, I guess remains to be seen. But he's not someone who's going to be a complete liability at tackle. I think his footwork and just his range is complementary to Fuanga last year. I know a lot of people were adamant Fuanga could stick a tackle. So I think this is someone that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at the moment. And I think his best trait right now is his run blocking. He's someone that you really just want to run behind. He's a line of scrimmage mover. He's able to play in a variety of schemes. I think he can play in a man gap scheme, and I think he can probably even survive in a zone scheme. He may have to kick inside for that, but I think this is a versatile offensive lineman who really showed last year in the SEC that he can handle anything that's thrown at him. And those 0 penalties I mentioned before, I think that's a massive, massive plus for him. He's someone who's really disciplined with his hands, not the most accurate or most refined in his handwork at the moment, but those not having any penalties in a year in the SEC is massive. And then on the weaknesses side, he's a little bit of a stiffer athlete. He's definitely probably the worst athlete that I'm going to mention on today's episode. Doesn't have the best bend, obviously, considering that freaky build that he has. He's a little stiff too. I think he play a little bit high at times. It causes him to lose his leverage a little bit. And for someone who's only 6'4", it's kind of a red flag in that regard because there are some guys that are like 6'7" that have pad level issues. It's not really that big of a deal, or you have to take into context. This is a guy who's a little bit on the shorter side. And I think, like I mentioned, the inconsistent striking, I think it allows people to get into his chest a little too often. Right now, I think it's serviceable and he's able to like mask it because he's so powerful. He's able to absorb it. But once you get into the NFL, that timing's got to be a little bit better. The hand accuracy's got to be a little bit more refined. And I think it's really going to help open up his game as a whole. So right now, I view him as like kind of an early day two type of guy, maybe a top 45 type player. But with one more big year in the SEC, he can work his way into the first round for sure.
Yeah. I have Ernest Green as a guard, so I kept him out of my rankings, but he's a really good player. And I think the move to guard is going to be really good for him. I know, like you said, we're probably not going to get to the interior offensive lineman for our summer scouting series, so I can appreciate you putting him in here. Um, but I think for me, a lot of the concerns or the weaknesses are just really mitigated once you throw him inside. I mean, I know you said the foot you weren't too troubled by the foot speed. I didn't love the foot speed, especially when he was on an island. So I think that move inside is going to be helpful for him. The top heavy build is just really interesting. I mean, like guys can take that outside shoulder so easily just because he just doesn't have the best flexibility in his lower half. So I think that move inside is going to be really good for him. Um, but on the pros, I mean, there are times when he does sit down and anchor, and like you said, he absorbs power so well, so easily. I think he has good length to stick at tackle, and I think this is a guy that you could throw at tackle if you needed a game or two, if somebody was injured. And then I just love the demeanor that he plays with, especially in the run game. He is a guy that looks to finish people in the run game in the second level. When he lines up linebackers, he looks to kill people. So I can really appreciate that in his game. And as a puller, as a guard, I think that's going to be really effective in the NFL. But for right now, I really don't see him sticking a tackle at the next level.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm an optimist. You're a pessimist. We get it.
I don't know if anybody said that about us before.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go to my number 5 here. I got Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. He was a really fun watch, man. 6'6", 317. This is a guy that started as a true freshman for West Virginia. He was actually a pretty high recruit. I think he was a 4-star recruit coming out of West Virginia and decided to stay home. So this was a big get for them when they got him in the 2022 class, I believe. But he started at right tackle his freshman year, and he's played the last 2 seasons as their left tackle. So the versatility to play both sides, big plus for him. This past season, had a 76.5% run blocking PFF grade and an 82.3% pass blocking grade. 0 sacks allowed this past season. Has had 0 sacks allowed in the last 2 seasons at left tackle. Only 9 pressures allowed this season. He did have 7 penalties, but just an outstanding season of not letting edge rushers get to the quarterback. Just a big, tall, very long tackle. He's an imposing player on the outside. His movement skills at his height are just extremely impressive. I mean, he's quick and he's agile. He fires out of his stance and he gets to the second level with ease. An extremely high football IQ. This may have been the smartest offensive lineman that I watched. He's got a lot of reps at both left and right tackle. The way he understands body positioning and angles, especially in the run game when setting up his blocks. He's always looking for a second guy to block, too. Just a really heady player. A guy that I would feel comfortable bringing in day one as a rookie and being like a swing tackle. Even if he wasn't a starter, this is a guy that I would feel comfortable throwing on an NFL field right now. He just gets playing the position. Some weaknesses right now. The natural leverage obviously is an issue for him. He's 6'6". He can set too high, and bendy, quick edge rushers can get underneath him. He needs to improve his hand placement as well. He can just miss high. It's kind of the same thing with that natural leverage. He's not an elite athlete, so he really needs to be technically sound with his punches and with his hands placement. But I think he just has improved so much over these past few years. And right now, I got him at 5. This is a high floor player for sure. He doesn't have the high ceiling with the athletic traits as some of these other guys. Maybe some of the guys who I have 6, 7, 8. But like I said, this is like a day two type of player that I would feel comfortable throwing in my lineup in year one as a rookie. So if you're looking for ceiling, maybe he's not your guy because I think that he's almost sort of a finished product of what he is at this point. But just an extremely high floor player that I think is a day two top 100 pick for sure.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch him. He's like the number one guy I missed, I think, on like who I was supposed to watch that I didn't. But the way you're hyping him up, I gotta give him a watch for sure because that seems like my type of guy.
Yeah,
That
I'm not kidding. When I was watching him, I was like, oh, like Ray would love this guy.
fuck.
Because like you can just like see his feel on the football field, like the way that he positions his body before he sets up the block is so good. He creates such good lanes for his running backs. Just an extremely smart offensive lineman. It was really fun watch.
I don't know if you touched on it, but does he have like that killer instinct in him? Is he like a bully on the line?
Big time.
Yeah, fucking
Yeah.
love that.
Well, he gets his
God.
hands. I mean, he starts his hands a little too wide. So like a lot of the strikes are like outside the shoulders. So just want to keep it a little bit more inside. But I mean, when he gets his paws on you, man, it's tough to get around. He's just really tough to get around. He's just a big body
Damn, gotta add him to the list. He's next to watch for
for
sure.
sure. All right, who you got at number four?
Oh, before I go to four, that being said, Coward's way out going with a high floor guy in summer scouting. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, but that being said, number four for
I like to throw my guys a bone.
I respect it, but summer scouting, man, go swing for the fences. Um,
Come on, I had Garrett Nussmeier for at 3 for our quarterback ranks. Guys played one game, and it was a bowl game. Don't
fuck,
talk to
okay.
me about taking swings.
I stand corrected. I stand corrected. That's insane. Um, number four, I'm at right. Number four for
Yeah,
me, Josh Connerly Jr., the Oregon left tackle.
nice.
So I know this is like I feel like this tackle class as a whole, the theme has been kind of like the teammate duos, and this is gonna be the only Oregon guy on my list. But both those tackles are really good. But Josh Connerly really stood out for me. He's the junior. He was a four-star recruit, number 31 overall from the state of Washington. And he was a first-year starter this past season, and he started all 14 games for the Ducks. He only allowed one sack and 17 total pressures on 540 pass blocking snaps. And he was an all Pac-12 honorable mention. So he had a pretty good season to debut as a starter. From this is a guy who's 6'4", 305 pounds, I believe. Let me just pull that up
305.
quick. 305, yeah. So he's a little bit smaller of an offensive tackle, but he makes up for that with he's such a fluid athlete, man. This is a guy, he just moves so calmly. I feel like he's always centered, got great balance, and he just knows exactly when he has to kick it up a gear and when he can like kind of like coast a little bit. His lower half is really thick too. So I think that once that kind of man strength comes in the upper body, he's actually the exact opposite of Ernest Green. Now I'm thinking about it.
He
Um,
really is.
because this guy is thick below the waist, but he's just a little lighter right now because he's a young player. So I think once that strength develops too, I think his game's really going to take to a whole nother level. But that shorter stature really does help him play with excellent leverage and pad level. He's got the flexibility to get underneath the opposing defensive lineman. I think that just makes it so much easier for him to block, and particularly on the move. I think that's his home in the next level. He's going to be tailor made for this Shanahan McVay tree that's just sprouted all over the place. His range, his angles that he takes to get to the second level as polar climbing, even on screens, I think that's his best trait right now. So he's someone in the NFL. He's going to translate perfectly, I think, to a left tackle in a wide zone scheme, and really be a day one starter in the NFL. On the negatives, I think his hand usage right now really needs to be refined. I was actually watching shit, I don't remember which game it was, but I was like, I put that in the notes. I'm like, oh, hand usage, like they're not independently used or whatnot. Like, really gotta refine those. And then the next play, he like kind of tried to like show like a different look to the defensive lineman. He was like showing like a feint to try to pull him back quick. It was really I don't want to say shitty, but like, you could tell he wasn't used to it. But the fact that I think in his head he realized that he had to throw like a little bit of a change up at the rusher. I think that's really something that he can learn to develop on. I think in the off season he really should be working on his hands in particular, because if he becomes a technician with those hands and pass block in a pass protection, he's going to be a first round pick for sure. Some of the other weaknesses, I think he needs to really add some more weight, as I mentioned, particularly in that upper body. He can give up some ground on some bull rushes. I think if he can get a little bit more mass, I think that flexibility and ability to sink the hips will translate into a good anchor. And then on the third, he only has that 1 year of experience in the Pac-12. This year is going to be massive for him. Obviously, Oregon joining the Big Ten. You got a lot of great edge rushers you're going to be facing against. So if he gets another year on tape like he had last year with some improvements, obviously in the pass protection game, this is a guy I think is going to secure himself as a top 25 pick in the upcoming draft.
Yeah, he's fascinating, man. I got him at 6, but if you told me who's going to make the biggest rise this year, my bet would probably be on Connerly. Um, did a really good job covering him. Super athletic, fires out of his stance, light feet, just really easy mover. I actually thought he had better handwork than what you were giving him credit for, too. I thought his strikes were accurate. There were times where he was readjusting his hands when he would get swiped off. I thought he was pretty good in that aspect, honestly. Um, obviously, it all depends on what what games you watch of each guy. Um, but I watched them against UCLA, and I mean, both he and his teammate Aji Cornelius. I mean, Latu got them a couple times, but I thought throughout the course of the game, he did a little bit better as he was starting to figure out him and the Murphy twins. I thought he did a pretty good job in that game. The reason I got him outside right now, the play strength just needs to get better. Like you said, I mean, he is light on tape, and guys can get into his chest pretty easily. And the other thing, I love the way he gets out and runs into the second level, but he just doesn't finish people in the second level. Like he doesn't have that like dog mentality right now. And it's weird because he generates so much force because he is so athletic and he is so fast, but he's just not killing people in the second level. I want to see him just like line up a couple guys this next season. And I think as he continues to add play strength, that'll get better. But I just want to see that mentality, just like go and finish somebody in the second level because he's there.
Yeah,
Like he's like,
no, I
go ahead.
agree with you. I think that's kind of why he's a little bit lower on my list because I mean that's one of the traits I really look for. I love that killer instinct, but I just don't really think that's his game. I think he's more of that finesse, like true athlete. But you're right. If he develops that dog mentality, that's going to be another tick in the old positive box to really help raise his stock a little bit.
For sure. And then the last thing I wrote, kind of mentioning with the experience. I mean, I still think he has a lot to learn. I mean, there are plays where it doesn't seem like he's working with the rest of the offensive line. Like he's kind of doing his own thing. Um, and there are also just plays where he's just not anticipating, or he's not anticipating like an edge rusher's plan. He's just a little reactive. So that'll come as he gains more experience. Obviously, just a 1 year of experience playing left tackle, so that'll come. But that's why I got him at 6 right now. But like I said, this is a guy that could be on a meteoric rise this next season if he adds play strength and he starts to figure it out and learn this offense a little bit more, which he should in year 2. This is a guy that could easily find his way into everybody's top 3.
Who do you have for?
All right, for me at number 4, I got Emory Jones. This is definitely a guy you love. From LSU, 6'4". They got him listed at 6'6", but done some digging around, and he's not 6'6". He's 6'4".
Well, I feel like it's just really easy to see when his teammates also
Yeah,
listed at 6'6". It's like, okay, something's off here. Either one of them 6'8" or one of them is 6'5", 6'4.5". I mean,
yeah. But 6'4", 322 this past season for LSU, 73.7 run blocking grade and a 71.7 pass blocking grade, 2 sacks allowed on 18 pressures, just 3 penalties, really good this past season. Power is just the name of this guy's game, and that's why I know you're going to love this guy. Just ultra strong in his hands, got bricks for hands, and he's got length too. I don't know. Some people were saying that like the length was like adequate. Probably, I think he was pretty long, honestly, on tape. Um,
honestly, this entire class, I could not get a read on anyone's length. That's what I was saying. Last year, they all had like 36-inch arms. Like Latham was like 35.
it's pretty easy to
Mims was
tell.
36. It was so easy to tell. And this year, I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I have no idea. But
Yeah.
I guess time will tell.
Right. He works his hands as well as anybody in this class. Ultra violent, and he just loves to throw the hands around, man. He loves to get in a junkyard dogfight. He is so strong in his lower half. Bull rushes really don't phase him. If guys try to get into his chest, he just eats guys for days. And then the mentality we just talked about with Connerly is a complete 180 type of player. This guy is a mauler in the run game. He has that seek and destroy type of attitude, when he gets to the second level, which is just so fun to watch. I mean, there are just plays where he's out there killing people. For me right now, I got him at 4. Is the feet. The feet are the big thing for me. I mean, he gets stuck in mud sometimes in pass pro where it just causes him to waist bend, and guys get that inside rip move is just so easy to cross his face. I just thought too many guys were cutting across the inside for a player of this talent. Getting to the second level, he can do it, but it takes him a little while to get going. It can be a little lumbering for me, and then there are times where he plays with too high a pad level too. He's got to sink that hips, get the butt down, and just really anchored down. But man, he is a fun player. I'd be curious to see if his move is to guard too, because a lot of those questions get erased when he plays guard, and then this is a really fun interior player. But I do think he has the length and the power to stick at tackle. Just matters on the type of scheme that teams are playing, because I don't think this is a guy that you play in a zone scheme. This is a gap type of player, head up and go attack. So I'm curious to see what you have on him, but he was a really fun watch. Him and Campbell, they're kind of opposite players, honestly, on both sides of the tackle spots.
Yeah, they're not similar at all. Yeah, he's my favorite player in this. He's my favorite offensive lineman in this class. I have
Nice.
him ranked at number 2, but I'm in love with this guy. This is literally picture perfect how I want my tackles to play. In terms of just traits and mentality, guy's an ass kicker. He's just when I turned the first tape on, I was watching Campbell, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stop watching Jones just because he's talking shit after every play. He's like putting people into the dirt. I'm like, oh god, I love this guy. That mentality, I think you have to. Not you don't have to have necessarily, but I think it just does so much when you can just set the tempo for not only for the offensive line but for the entire offense and the entire team as a whole. I think he has that type of motor and just intensity that he brings to the game. You mentioned the hands, snappy and powerful. I think they clearly redirect rushers. And you mentioned he's constantly kind of resetting them too in the hand fight, which I do love. And okay, this is a weird one because his feet do get stuck in the mud on like going to those outside rushes. And I think the lack of flexibility is a concern for sure. He kind of bends over his pads too, not only at the hips, at the waist rather, but like it looks awkward when he gets to the
Yeah,
edge.
the head
But
ducking.
yeah, but that being said, he gets out of his stance really well. He covers a lot of ground on that kick slide. So I don't know if it's maybe a technical approach he needs to kind of change because I think he does have the athleticism and like the foot speed in order to guard the edge. But there's something that get tweaked in his game to really maximize his pass blocking ability. And I do agree with you. There is a potential to kick inside with this guy if this issue really occurs again. But that being said, I think he has the overall athleticism stick at tackle. I think it really just comes down to some technical tweaks that he has to make to really maximize his game. The other negative too, I think you mentioned he does a good job of absorbing power and anchoring down, but I feel like he lets people get into his chest a little too often, and I think he does give up some ground. He does a couple of those hops back when people are getting in on his chest a little bit. So I would like to see him improve the timing of his hands a little bit more consistently and just anchor down a little bit more efficiently without giving up so much ground. And that also leads me to like I couldn't tell if maybe it was a length issue, if that's why people were getting in his chest so often. So I guess time will tell with the measurements on that regard. But I love this guy. I think he's someone that you can build that you can throw into an offensive line and just change the culture immediately. So he's my number 2. I think right now you gotta say he can be a right tackle, and I think he'll probably be a top 20 pick in next year's draft.
Mm, nice. What do you think about the narrow stance that he and
It,
Campbell have?
yeah, it's well, I think I got a lot.
They're obviously teaching it.
Yeah, for sure, and they both stand really upright in pass blocking
I hate it.
scenarios, and then get into the 3-point stance when it's a run. I feel like it's kind of like tipping a pitch in baseball.
I hate it.
Um, so it annoyed me a lot more with Campbell because Campbell doesn't really get out of his stance. He doesn't fire out like with a long kick slide. And it kind of and then when I watched Jones, he covered a lot of distance with that. He was able to get out a little bit faster. So I don't know if it's a player preference or what, but yeah, it wasn't too fun to watch. I was getting a little annoyed at the start for sure.
All right, who you got at number 3?
So I guess we'll just go to his teammate, Will Campbell. I have at
All right,
3.
nice.
Yep. So he's another one, true junior, 5-star recruit, number 14 overall from Louisiana. He's started 26 games since arriving on campus. He was a freshman All American, second team All SEC as a freshman, and then last year he was first team All SEC. Last year, he allowed no sacks and 17 total pressures with 5 penalties on 491 pass blocking snaps. So this is a guy, he's every inch of that 6'6" he's listed at, but you wouldn't really know it based on how smooth he moved. He's a really, really smooth mover with light feet. I saw a couple times, like, I think it was them, LSU and Texas. They do like this, they have this, like, these tackles have these weird, like, karaoke they do before they pull. And like both him and Banks, who we'll talk about, they look so smooth doing it. They did not look like guys who were 6'4", 6'6", 320 plus. So I think it really is a testament to how good of an athlete this guy is. He's an efficient pass blocker who can defend both the outside and inside shoulder. And I think he does a really good job blocking out in space in the run and screen game. He got very subtle movements when in his pass blocking sets, which I like. He's not like a bull in the china shop. I feel like he's super confident and just knows exactly how much space he has to cover and just has a good feel for managing distance a little bit. And he's a heady player too, who does a really good job picking up stunts and blitzes. I feel like he started 26 games since he's a freshman, so he's a young kid, but he's got tons of experience. I think that's going to help translate to the NFL early. Some of the weaknesses, he's another one. I mean, we just talked about pre-snap, he stands straight up, but his pad level gets a little too high. I feel like that really, he's another one. His anchor isn't as good as I'd like it to be. He gives up some ground once guys get into his chest. He's not as explosive as I like from a left tackle either. I mentioned he doesn't really cover a lot of ground with that kick slide. He has that narrow stance pre-snap and kind of just, he's just a little bit, I don't want to say lazy, but just like lackadaisical, I guess, a little bit when he gets out of his stance. I don't know if maybe that will change if it's just a scheme thing or what, but this is a guy who's clearly got all the talent in the world. He can be a top 10 pick come April. I just want to see him play with a little bit more aggression and get a little bit more powerful. And I think that will come in time probably. So I view him as a first round pick for next year, but where he goes in the first round depends on how he gets stronger and kind of just improves his overall game.
Yeah, he was really interesting too because before I watched any of these guys, I mean, I'd obviously heard about Will Campbell because playing as a true freshman at LSU, All American type of player, um, just hadn't really dove into him. I thought he was going to be like a little more freaky of an athlete, um, but he's just like a solid player in every aspect of playing tackle. Like he's just got above average athleticism, above average power, like above average length, I think. Um,
Now, this brings me to the point I made to start the episode off. Are we just biased because of the tackles we saw last year? Like, is he maybe a special athlete and we're just not really seeing it because we saw Amarius Mims and J.C. Latham and all of them?
I don't know. I was trying to think about like who he projects as in the NFL. Um, I kept coming back to like, I mean, he's not as tall, but like Colton Miller on
Colton
the
Miller was a freak
Raiders.
athlete too.
I know. That's why I'm like, is he a freak athlete?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's. I mean, he is not in that class of the guys last year in terms of freaky. I just think he's like above average in almost every category that I would have for an offensive lineman in terms of IQ. Like I said, athleticism, power, length. I think he's just an above average player in all those aspects, which lands you in the top 15. Like you're
I think
just
it's a I think it's a pure just athlete, like skills and everything aside. I think he's kind of comparable to Alt.
mm,
You know what I mean? Alt didn't really blow anyone away with his like overall athleticism or anything.
yeah. I think he's probably a better athlete than Alt, but Alt had more power than he's got.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Um, but yeah, just a really solid player all around. Just plays very in control, very smooth. The feet are just light and compact. Like he doesn't strain when he moves around compared to some of these other guys. Like you could just feel it, like the flat back type of thing. Like that stuff is outstanding for a player who's 6'6". Technically sound hands, like they don't get outside defenders' frames. His strikes are always in the chest plate. He reattaches hands when he gets swiped. Like just a very heady, very technical player at this point in his career. I mean, you said he's still a young player, but he's played so many damn snaps already, which is super impressive. For me, why I got him at 2, I don't know if I mentioned that. He could stand a little too upright. Speed rushers can get under his arms. I don't think he's like overly long, but he's going to be fine in the NFL. And then there are times he gets too patient and he just lets guys get into his chest way too easily. Want to see him be a little bit more aggressive, especially with guys that you know that you can fuck up in terms of power. Like, you just got to take the fight to them sometimes. Like, don't let guys get a full head of steam and get into your chest. Like, obviously, it depends who you're playing, but there were a few games, like at the beginning of last season, that like he was just letting guys way below his talent level just get way too deep for me. So, um, just be an ass kicker like your teammate and sky high.
So I don't know if I mentioned it. I mentioned how he's not really explosive out of his stance, but another negative I saw, he's not snappy with his hands. He's more of a catcher at this point, which is what
Big time.
I think that was like what was the difference between him and his teammate for me in ranking. I want to see him more aggressive with those hands and just have more of a punch like his teammate, like you said.
Right. All right. I'm at 3 here. I got Jonah Savania. Hopefully, I didn't butcher that too bad.
There's no chance you were saying that properly, so it doesn't matter.
I tried to get pronunciations, but I literally saw it maybe like 5 different ways. So I think what I did maybe covered us. Tackle out of Arizona. He was playing right tackle opposite Jordan Morgan this past season. This is a massive, massive human being. 6'5", 330. This past season for Arizona, 61 run blocking grade, 81.7 pass blocking grade, just an elite pass protector at the right tackle position. 2 sacks allowed this past season on 16 pressures, just 4 penalties. Just, I couldn't believe the foot speed with this guy at this size. I mean, he is so light. He glides around the field. I did not expect that at all. I thought he was going to be lumbering to the second level. But man, the way he can move his feet in mirrors when he's in a phone booth, I mean, he's an elite pass protector at this point. Plays with such a wide base. It's just so hard to push him back. He's got so much mass, and the way that he sets up his legs and his butt, I mean, he sits down so easily, can absorb pressure so natural. Pulling and getting to the second level is easy and fluid. He crushes people in the second level when he makes contact. When he lines somebody up, he destroys them in the second level. Very high football IQ to recognize stunts and twists. He does a good job of reach blocking and then finding that second man. And then I think he's got big time versatility too. He played guard in 2022, and then he moved out to that right tackle position, split time between right tackle and guard this past season in 2023. But I think that versatility is going to really help him at the next level. The reason I got him at 3 right now, he just isn't overly powerful on a down to down basis. There are times when he just destroys people, but when you watch a full game down to down, I mean, I just want to see him be a little bit more consistent in that pop in his hands because he does have it. It's in there. But for a guy who's 330, I think he's a little too finessey at times. But it's in there, so I want to see him bring that out this season. The hand placement, especially in the run game, especially when he gets to the second level, is a little erratic. He just lands high when he's on the move. So want to see him really hone in on that striking point and hit it. And then I think average length for him at this point, again, hard to tell with some of these guys, but I think like 33 inches is where he'll come around. So average length of the position could push him inside, but I do think he has the foot speed and the mass to stick at tackle. So we'll see. He's going to be fascinating. Arizona's got some really good players.
They really
This is
do.
going to be a fun season for them.
That offense is going to be fun. I can't wait to play with them in NCAA a little bit.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. Did you have him anywhere?
No, he's outside my top 5. I don't even know where exactly I'd rank him. I just wasn't the biggest fan of this guy personally. You mentioned he's a massive tackle. I was surprised that he covered so much ground with his feet and out of his kick slide a little bit, but the timing on his hands just isn't there, and there's really no snap to him either, which I didn't like. I think he's someone who's a little stiff too, really stiff. His flexibility, I think he kind of gets caught off the edge. I think this is a guy who his home may be on the interior. I view him as like a day 2 type of player for me with a higher floor, like you said, but I just don't see the traits there for summer scouting to put him in my top 5 personally. I don't know if he's going to be able to stick a tackle for the long term. So he's going to be outside my top 5.
Yeah, I think for him, I think it's a demeanor thing. I think it's in there for him with the power. I think it just needs to get brought out. And I think obviously the move from playing guard the year prior and then making that switch out to tackle, it is different. So
It's also
hopefully,
it's also a plus too because he did play I think like a 200 snaps at guard this past season too, so
yeah,
he's able to move around, which I think is going to be a massive plus for NFL teams.
yeah. So hopefully, in the second year playing tackle, um, he figures out that demeanor, that power that you need, especially when you're one on one on an island with an edge rusher. So he'll be a fun one, and that whole team, like we said, can be really really fun to watch. All right, we're both at number one here. I'm assuming we have the same player, unless you really loved some Jack Nelson out of Wisconsin. But let's talk about Kelvin Banks, man, because he is so damn good.
I'll let you start. I usually start when we have the same one, so I'll be a gentleman today.
Okay, appreciate that. Kelvin Banks out of Texas, 6'4", 324. This past season had a 70 run blocking grade on PFF, an 86.8 pass blocking grade, just 1 sack allowed on 12 pressures, had 6 penalties, just 3 sacks allowed in the last 2 seasons, and only had 2 penalties last year. So a very young player. I think he's a true junior.
Yep.
Um, a very young player, but has played a ton of snaps and a ton of games already, which is super impressive. Just a thick, big bodied player and an excellent mover with that body. It's really, really impressive the way he gets out and can really run. Plays with excellent leverage and pad level. The way he sets up and the way he fires out of the stance, he is low man wins at all times. Every single play, he's low man, can flip the hips really easily, can sink and anchor against big bull rushers, and then he can get out of his stance really, really fast. And when he gets into that second level, like Emory Jones, it's seek and destroy, but this guy has so much more athleticism, and he really builds a lot of pop in his hands when he gets to the second level. The weaknesses right now, shorter arm length. Um, and I think it's going to be average, honestly. Like a lot of these guys can get into his chest a little easier, but his anchor is just so solid. It really doesn't kill him. Um, I just want to see him play a little bit more control too in the run game. I mean, there are times where he's not finding the right target, and he's hitting guys, which I can appreciate hitting guys because there are players where they get into the second level and they're not touching anybody, and that's like one thing I truly, truly hate. He's always touching somebody, um, but just a little bit more IQ and a little bit more experience of finding the right guys to hit to open lanes for your running backs and quarterbacks. And then there are times when he's just pushing guys back when he knows he can physically overpower them instead of latching on and grabbing and not letting go. There are times when he's literally just pushing, pushing, pushing. I just want to see him because he's got such great grip strength. I just want to see him latch onto guys a little bit more and just be a little bit more consistent in that aspect. But man, he is so damn fun. He's so athletic. This guy's got top 10 written all over him.
Yeah, this is a high floor player. I think he doesn't have the necessarily. I don't think he's going to be wowing anyone with his physical traits. Like he's a great athlete. Don't get me wrong, but like we mentioned, 6'4", 220, 324, not the greatest length. So it's like he's not someone who's going to come off the bus and be like, wow, this guy's an absolute freak. But he's a technician. And I was very surprised. I mean, I don't really hold much stock in PFF grades, but I was surprised the difference between the pass blocking and run blocking grade you mentioned because I think he's a
Mhm.
damn good run blocker.
Yeah, he
I
is.
think the leverage he
I think
plays with.
70 is good. A good grade.
I don't. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not really versed in the entire grading system of PFF, but I think just his ability to get to the second level, like you mentioned, I think he's a little bit more under control than you kind of give him credit for. I think he's a finisher at the second level, like you mentioned, and he's someone who can block in space, on the move and screens, obviously pulling. As a pass blocker, he's a technician with his hands. That's why I really love him. He's constantly like showing different looks, feints, readjusting, coming like swimming underneath to get that inside leverage, which I really love to see. He's someone. There is a little stiffness in his game when he's blocking on an island. I don't know. I feel like his athleticism is more apparent as a run blocker than as a pass blocker, but I think that should improve with time. Um, he's different. He's like I think you mentioned he is so proportional and filled out too, which is something that you don't really see for a young offensive tackle his age. He's thick, dude.
Yeah.
He is as an NFL body right now. He can handle power with the best of them. I just think, like I mentioned, he's just a high floor player. I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's gonna be talks about him moving inside, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was come February. But I think there's a guy you let him stick a tackle until he proves otherwise. He is just such a high floor. I don't know if he's gonna be a top 5 pick, but Like in this past draft, I think he'd been a top 15, top 12 pick, and I think it would have been more than justified.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Fuago went 14, right?
But yeah, I mean, he's definitely above Fuaga.
Yeah, he probably would have fell into that spot honestly at 14 to New Orleans.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's really good, man. And I think you said high floor player. I think this guy's got a high ceiling. I think I think I like his athleticism even a little bit more than you do. I think he's got room to even grow in that aspect. Um, I think that arm length is going to be big for him.
I
I think
think
that's it.
I think he's going to be comparable to Slater was. Like where like Slater didn't really wow anyone with his raw tools and everything, but look what he's done in the NFL.
Yeah,
So I feel like
he's
he's kind
strong.
of
He's stronger than Slater.
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like just like raw power. Like he's definitely stronger than Slater. Um, but yeah, I mean that's actually a good comp though, because I feel like the movement skills are very very similar, and so is the body type. All right, let's go 1 through 5, and then we'll talk about some guys outside of our top five.
So I got Kelvin Banks at 1, Emory Jones Jr. at 2, the right tackle from LSU. I got his teammate Will Campbell, the left tackle from LSU at 3. I got Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon. He's left tackle at 4, and at 5, Ernest Green the third from Georgia. A lot of
Nice.
juniors in the thirds, huh?
Yeah, but a lot of all these guys have played multiple seasons
Yeah,
already. It's weird. So for me, I got Texas left tackle Kelvin Banks at 1, LSU left tackle Will Campbell at 2, Arizona right tackle Jonas Savanaia at 3,
that
Emory
was player.
Jones, the right tackle for LSU at 4, and then Wyatt Milam, the left tackle for West Virginia at 5. Who are one or two guys outside your top 5 that you liked?
I really like Blake Miller from Clemson.
Yeah,
He's true junior from Ohio. He's
looks like me
six.
playing tackle though.
Come on, don't get come on. Let's be real. He's 6'6", listed at 310. Probably gonna be a little lighter than that.
People are saying 295.
That'd be wild. But he's someone. He's another one. True junior, but he has 27 starts under his belt already at Clemson. He started from a freshman all the way through last year at right tackle. He's a freshman All American, and in 2023, third team All ACC. He's got really good athleticism. But what I love about him is his hand placement, and he's got really strong grip strength for someone his size. His hands are always inside. I feel like they never drift, which I was really, really impressed about. I think I was very close to putting him at 5 for me, but that lightweight and he kind of gets dog
He
walked a
gets
little bit.
ragged.
Yeah, I think Verse had like a push pull on him and he flew forward like 5 yards and was like face minded. But I think that'll come with time. Like I said, he's a young player. He bulks up, eats a little pasta, goes to 315 maybe. I think this is a guy who can be a right tackle in the NFL. It may take some time. I think right now he's probably a day 2 player, probably in that 50 to 65 range. But after a year of development, he gets a little heavier and develops as a man. I think this gives someone who can be a really good starter in the NFL.
Yeah, he is so technically refined already. It was so impressive to watch the hand usage, but I mean, he ends up on the ground so off, like so much that I couldn't put him in my top 5. He needs to add like 20 pounds, like
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
20 pounds easy. Like he still can. I think he's his body type too. I feel like he's got room to put on weight, um, but he's just got to do it. For me, I'll talk about Josh Connerly's teammate, the right tackle, Johnny Cornelius out of Oregon. 0 sacks allowed this past season and 11 pressures. This is a transfer from Rhode Island. This guy was a 0-star recruit, so I love this rise. 0-star recruit going to Rhode Island and then having an unbelievable season at Oregon. He did have 9 penalties this past season, but 5 were in the same game against Washington State. I actually watched that
That's
game.
that's actually crazy.
Yeah, a lot of holding penalties, so got to clean that up. But 2,300 snaps at right tackle. This guy is extremely smart, extremely experienced. He's really strong. Power is the name of his game. Just very instinctual player. He really picks up twists and stunts with ease. But for me, penalties were a huge issue. He's got 19 over the last 2 seasons, and he's just not a great athlete at this point. I mean, the foot speed is questionable, isn't very flexible, and I think he's got average length. So he was just outside, but this is a guy that like I would feel comfortable taking on my football team on day 3 And if he needed to start in a pinch, like this is a guy that I would feel comfortable throwing in a game because he's very heady, extremely high football IQ. So he's a good one to watch out for, like a day 3 type of player.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, like I think you mentioned it, but just the flexibility is really my big red flag with him. I think when edge rushers get the corner and just dip on him, he's kind of just got no answer for it. So I don't know if he's as bad of an athlete, like overall athlete, like foot speed as you kind of made it out to be, but I think the flexibility and just the stiffness overall is really what is going to do him in. So I don't know how easy that is to improve, but I guess we'll see this upcoming year.
Yeah. Anybody else you wanna touch on?
Not particularly. I wasn't like I mentioned before. I wasn't overly impressed with this class, if I'm being honest.
All right, I'll talk about one of your boys before we get out of here, Josh Simmons. And you can obviously add to this too. You watched a lot of him. 6'5", 310. I thought there were a lot of good stuff about Simmons. But I know when I texted you, you were saying like day 3 type of player. But he's a good athlete. Plays with really good leverage and foot speed to mirror on the edge. I mean, I think his anchor and his lower half is really solid. He's got quick hands, and I think he's pretty competitive too. Like plays with his hair on fire, but he's just not overly imposing as a pass protector. I think he get pushed back by strong edge rushers. I think he also just needs to sustain his blocks a little bit longer. There are times where he's just letting guys go too easily, and then the penalties, 25 in the last 2 seasons, just has to improve. But he does a lot of good stuff on tape, so he was interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just a day 3 type of guy right now. I mean, he's the transfer from San Diego State, started all 13 games at right tackle for them, and then left tackle for us 13 games. But I don't know. I just don't, he's another one, doesn't really bend well at all. I think he's stiff. He ends up on the ground way too often, especially for someone his size. He's a big dude, filled out. He shouldn't be getting like bull rush and like ragdolled like that. But on the positive, I do think he has a strong inside hand to stop that crossface. He's pretty decent in pass protection overall, but I don't know. I don't really see it with him in terms of a starting offensive tackle in the NFL, but maybe he can develop into one with time. But as of now, I view him as like a 4th-round pick.
All right. Sounds good. A few guys that we didn't touch on: Riley Mahlman and Jack Nelson from Wisconsin. Day 3 type of guys. Anthony Belton from NC State, who a lot of people like. Just a massive human being. I think he's like 350 plus. Just a big boy, but that foot speed, I was concerned about. We were having flashbacks about watching guys like Mekhi Becton. Honestly, at that size, PTSD. Those big boys. It's rough. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us here on Between Two Tackles. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our offensive tackle summer scouting episode. Stay locked in with us. We got a lot of good stuff for summer scouting coming up. We got wide receivers. We got corners coming out. I cannot wait to do our college football and NFL previews in just a few, maybe a month or so. That's coming out soon. Holy shit. I need football so bad. As always, please rate and subscribe to the pod and follow our Twitter at 2tackles2. Follow, like, and subscribe our YouTube channel at Between Two Tackles with the number 2. And stick with us as we head towards this 2024 college football NFL season. I cannot wait. Ray, my friend, appreciate you.